Welcome to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast, episode 94. Can you believe it, guys? We are 94 last episodes in. Today, I am super fired up, guys. This guy is a special treat. I know what you're thinking as you see this man. You're like, what do we got a 24-year-old kid on here for? This is not a 24-year-old man. Believe it or not, this guy is really just an inspiration to everybody. This is my good friend here, Imran R Ally, MD. He has been practicing in the medical field for 11 years. He has some awesome takes on health, longevity, how we can all fuel ourselves and live our best lives. So thank you so much for being on, brother. Welcome to the podcast. What do you got to say to the people, my man?
Hey, Tyler. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is a great pleasure on my part. I just wanted to get on here and spread the word, living life, the most possible healthy way. You know, I see people on medications chronically for a very long period of time. You don't need to be on these medications. There's a better way. That's basically my message.
And I have to say, it's a refreshing take. That a lot of the doctors I know are like you, Imran, that think that, but there's such a bad stigma in there. Oh, just like pushing pills and things like that. Where do you think that stigma comes from, and how can we fight back against that?
Yeah, I see it quite often. People come to you because they're having like a medical issue, and they want a medication, and they think that medication is going to be a quick fix, but they don't realize that the medical condition had is basically accumulated over a period of time. And to be honest with you, there's no quick fix. And I think we kind of live in a society that people are used to things happening right away. And it's just something that I think people have to get a better understanding of.
And so helping them have this more long-term mindset, dude. I'll post a 30-second video and I'll literally have people comment under, that's way too long, bro. I'm not watching that. I'm like, it's 30 seconds, man. That's like our attention span. So as you say that
Yeah.
resonates a lot. And I read the other day and I saw on your Twitter that the average adult's on 4 medications now in the US. We're 66% overweight and obese. What do you think needs to be done? I mean, we didn't see this 30, 40 years ago, right? So what do
No.
you think has changed, and what can we do to fight back?
So, I mean, when I'm doing this podcast, I'm going to talk evidence-based stuff, but I'm also going to tell you about like my hypothesis. There's like a dietary sugar hypothesis out there. So way back in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, there's this massive like study called the Ansel Keys study. They basically linked like cholesterol levels with dietary fat intake. And they realized that when they did the study, it was an observation study, huge study, 7 countries. So what had happened was the study showed that increased fat intake causes heart issues, basically heart attacks. And so government agencies, health associations, the American Heart Association within the United States started pushing this massive media front saying that increased fat intake causes heart issues. So when the public got hold of this, the food industry was like, well, we need to switch over to foods that are less in fat. And if they do that, foods are not going to taste very good. They're going to taste like garbage. So what they did is they started putting more sugar. So after the study, like in the 1980s, this is where the food industry like started switching over from high fat to like very high sugar, because they can't sell products if it doesn't have good taste. And if you look at the graph on the obesity rates and actually overweight rates, they've skyrocketed since the 1980s. And so I think like that's played a huge role. And so the food industries, they've basically been putting in large amounts of sugar in mostly processed foods that you eat today. I mean, me growing up, I used to love like, so I didn't grow up here in the United States, but I grew up in like Barbados. And I used to love Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms back in the day.
Lucky Charms guy.
Dude, those things have tons of sugar in them. It's like insane. My dad, luckily, he used to like have us mixing cornflakes because he's like, this is too much sugar for you. But like, and you constantly eat these foods, and that can have a huge effect on your weight over time. So I think like that plays a role, but there's a lot of other factors as well too.
Let me ask you 2 things with that. Do you believe that we now know that that's the way, but they continue going just for profits? Like that we now kind of know better, but it's like, well, people are trained to love sugar, and if you take sugar out of things, people might not buy it. So we kind of do that at our detriment. And then also, man, on the Lucky Charms, it says heart healthy on the box. So I used to think I was eating a healthy breakfast. I eat 2 big bowls of that, and I was like, well, and then I'd crash 30 minutes later and I'm hungry again, right?
Right.
That's kind of what sugar does.
Absolutely. Yeah. So answer your first question. I mean, these food industry conglomerates and corporations. I mean, they absolutely have to know what's that's in my opinion. I think like they know what's going on, and if they take these sugars away, it's not going to taste very good. And so like, how are they going to make their billions and billions of dollars per year? I'm sorry. What was your second question?
So I think the second one was kind of like the marketing around it of like being heart healthy, right? And you see this, and my wife's really into this. She's master's in PhD in nutrition from Purdue, and so she'll show me that I'll say like, oh, I think this is healthy for the kids, and she's like, like just because it says like all natural, or she's like turn it over, and she's like they add sugar to pasta sauce, like to all these things. Like sugar is now in everything, and I feel like it addicts kids from a young age, and it seems to be
Yeah.
enemy one too.
So yeah, if there's any small like food ingredient that has been shown to be heart beneficial, then they can put a claim on that box, like saying nothing. And then to your point about the cravings, it's kind of insane because like there's poor quality evidence to this, but I think like there's a big piece of it that's true. So when you eat sugar, you have a response in your brain. The dopamine centers they fire off like when you eat all that sugar. And so what happens over time is when you keep eating sugar, the receptors in your brain actually like get used to it and they downregulate. So you have to keep eating more, and it kind of causes an addictive cycle. And what happens over time is like your receptors in your brain are completely thrown off, and it causes a huge imbalance. And you start craving more sugar, and if you don't get it, then you get these withdrawals, get pretty irritable, you get completely out of whack. There's actually studies that show that there's a link to mental health as well, like a downregulation in your mental health. But it's kind of frustrating for me because like when I used to practice back in earlier in my days, I'm trained in family medicine, so I'm boarded in family medicine. We'd see like all the different types of patients, kids, OB-GYNs, like just older adults. But I was seeing kids with diabetes like at 16, and that means that they have to be eating sugar for over 10 years, like to get to that point. And it's just insane how these products can be sold. And I I posted a thing on Twitter the other day about the FDA. They like banned color number 3, red color number 3, which was shown to be possibly carcinogenic, which means it causes cancer, for cosmetic stuff, like stuff you put on your face. They banned it like back in the 1990s, and they actually said that there's low risk in ingesting this stuff. I just thought it was funny that you could put it on your skin, but you can't if you ingest it. It's okay. But like California, they came out like last month and they banned the color because like it's in everything. It's in Peeps, like those dots, and some other products. It's just so I'm sure I'm not saying that they don't have our best interests at heart. I like to think optimistically and hope they do, but the whole point is like you can't rely on these government agencies. You need to like do your own research. Like you said, your wife like turned over and look on the back, and it's kind of crazy. Like the ingredients. I usually will tell people, if you look at the back of the nutrition label, look at the amount of sugar. Like you shouldn't be eating more than like 20 to 25 grams of sugar in a day. Like even that, like I don't even eat that over a 3-day period. And I it's just insane. And some of these sodas and drinks that you have, or they have like 40, 50, 60 grams of sugar in them.
I used to drink a Starbucks every morning, a caramel latte, every morning about 6, 7 years ago. And some days I'd have 2 when I worked at the
Yeah.
Brother, I looked up, I believe it was 46 grams of sugar in one. So
yeah, that's like entire week.
Grams for a day. And that's not anything else I'm eating, right? The added sugar into everything else. And then you look at over time how that's going to build up and, cause the weight issue, all the issues, right?
Right. I know I kind of get technical like because I have a background in like micro and molecular biology, and so that's why I'll go down to like the molecular level sometimes. But back in the day before like all these processed sugar foods, you would eat whole stuff, like stuff that you can't, like fruits, vegetables, stuff like starches like potatoes, oatmeal, and now, like this processed stuff, it's not the amount of absorption is like not slowed by the whole foods. It's immediately absorbed into your system. It spikes your sugar up, and over time you get insulin resistance, and the insulin resistance is what causes the weight gain. And so like the insulin resistance can actually turn to diabetes. It can turn into like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And back to your point about the medications. So the reason that people are on all these medications is because the number one cause of death in the United States is heart disease. And all these medications that they're prescribing is specifically to treat like heart disease, and then all the complications from what I think is like these high levels of processed sugars and carbohydrates.
And so what we're sort of doing as a country, I guess, and as a whole, is we're fighting the symptom, but not the cause. We're waiting until it gets to that point where, man, we don't really have any other option. We have to get on these medications. Whereas if people would just start younger and eat whole foods and real foods and not get so much sugar, they could probably avoid a lot of these things. Is that pretty fair to say?
Man, Tyler, you hit the nail right on the head. Yeah. And so I work in the hospital, and I see what happens when it gets to that point. And I've just been getting frustrated. Like, and I saw all this stuff skyrocket after COVID. It kind of happened to me too. Like, people started to sit at home. They didn't exercise. Start eating junk food. It was a really, really hard time. Like even me, I put on like 5 or 10 pounds during that period of time. It was just very, very frustrating. But it is like getting to the realization that you have to do this before it happens. People only want to make a change after something really bad happens. Mm-hmm. I actually posted, I'm not going to reveal patient information, but I had a patient that he was eating like really bad junk food for a while, and what ended up happening was he had a massive heart attack, and he needed like bypass surgery. And he said that he had the bypass surgery, and he was driving back home after for recovery, and he saw like the McDonald's sign, and he said it reminded him of a morgue. He's like, and he said that's what hit his spot. It hit him like a ton of bricks. He went home and started doing all this research. He wanted to reverse everything, get off all of his medications. But I don't want that to happen to everyone. I want everyone to like come to the realization that you need to change all these habits and lifestyles before like it gets too late. No one wants to have a heart attack. No one wants to develop diabetes and neuropathy and have a lot of complications that you could prevent like before everything else.
Yeah, I think that's so well said, man. And I feel like, man, I won't take a politician serious until they start talking about this issue. Like, number one, it's going to bankrupt our country, the healthcare money that we spend. It's insane. But number two, just quality of life for citizens and like, if you're not a healthy society, if we keep moving towards this direction, lower testosterone counts, obesity on the rise. I mean, we're seeing, like you mentioned, 16-year-olds getting diabetes, like just like the eye test. When I look at my dad and my mom a couple generations ago in their high school graduating class, they maybe had one kid overweight, maybe two, right?
Right.
Oh, it's like very rare to see, man, when I'm even taking my kids out to see healthy kids, let alone healthy adults. It's becoming more and more rare. And it is frustrating from a point of, you think everybody kind of knows the right thing to do, but then maybe they don't, because maybe for a while they were like me and they're like, well, dude, I'm eating Lucky Charms and it says start healthy. So, and I'm like, Starbucks, it's just a coffee, right?
Right.
I feel like a lot of people aren't realizing. And I grew up hearing, okay, eggs is bad for you, causes high cholesterol, shouldn't eat a lot of meat, shouldn't eat. And now the way I kind of view it, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd love your take on this, is if you're eating anything where the ingredient is the thing. So there's not a list of ingredients. I'm eating an apple, it's an apple. I'm eating eggs, it's an egg. I'm eating steak, it's a steak. Like, that's pretty good. That's a good baseline to say, if you're eating anything that's just what it is from the earth and from nature, a lot better than a lot of these high processed stuff. Is that pretty fair to say? And could you expand on that?
Yeah, that's 100% fair to say. Oh my goodness. So like, yeah, the whole like eggs are bad for you, even like red meat. Like the studies, if you look at the red meat that they actually did the studies on, it was all processed meat. It wasn't like, no one's ever done a study on grass-fed, pasture-raised beef and how it's had its impacts on like cardiovascular health. So there is a myth out there that eating a lot of eggs can cause your cholesterol to skyrocket. It may cause your cholesterol to skyrocket, but there's growing body of evidence that high cholesterol is not necessarily bad for you. The bad cholesterol they mention is the LDL cholesterol, right? But there's actually two particles. There's like a large buoyant, and then there's like a small, very small density lipoprotein. So your cholesterol can't be transported in your bloodstream unless it gets wrapped in this lipoprotein. And so the small lipoprotein, the LDL, the small one, can actually go in and out of the vessels and around your heart. So what they're showing, what the evidence is showing, that these particles can become damaged, and they can go into the lining of the wall, and once they get damaged, they kind of stay in the lining. But if you're metabolically healthy, what happens is it can go into the endothelial wall and come right back out. So the caveat with the cholesterol is that if you're metabolically unhealthy, which means like you have very, very high triglycerides and very, very low HDL, and I think I'm getting a little bit complicated. I don't know if most of your listeners will understand what I'm talking about, but like when you go to the doctor, they give you a cholesterol panel, and the triglycerides and the HDL are the most important thing, I would say, next to the LDL. Because how do you tell if you're metabolically healthy or not? There's a poor man's test. It's the triglycerides over the HDL. If the level is like less than 1.5, you're pretty healthy metabolically. If it's over 2.2 to 2.5, I can tell that you're probably not eating healthy. So like when there's huge inflammation and all this stuff going on from the metabolically unhealthy person, that can cause injury to the vessels in your heart, and this is what causes the plaque buildup, and if it ruptures, and you get like these heart attacks. So I agree with you with the whole food approach. Like, I think if you're eating healthy, like the eggs is like such a great source of protein. You can't find a better complete protein source.
8 to 10 grams of protein for like 70 calories.
Yeah, and the omega-3s, and it comes with, there's even like a choline, which can actually help with reducing your risk of Alzheimer's. It's just like kind of crazy that people are been told that you shouldn't eat eggs. I eat 3 eggs a day minimum. So like I think like there's this kind of misperception about like what you can and can't eat. But the other caveat to that is you have to do these things on an individual basis. Like everyone's body's different. And I tell people, like, even though these very like complex studies done on huge populations, everyone is very different. I don't know like what you're doing for exercise. I don't know, what your genetics are. I don't know what you're eating. Like even like the microbiome. That's a huge body of evidence coming out there now. It's in its infancy, but we're showing that the microbiome has a huge impact on your health as well. I don't know if you've ever read or heard about this theory about how like eating processed sugars over the last 20 decades has been linked to changes in everyone's microbiome over time. And so what happens is you pass on this theoretically unhealthy microbiome to your kids, because the microbiome changes by what you're eating. If you're eating processed sugars all the time, it kind of disrupts that healthy microbiome. And when you grow from being a kid into an older adult, your environment, your family, you accumulate this microbiome. And so like over time, what may be happening is that people have developed this like weak microbiome, and it may be contributing to like all these metabolic issues as well.
Wow, that's scary and amazing, man. I do notice like when I'm out grocery shopping, dude, there's so many times I just want to go hug the parents when I see their cart and be like, can we please put some of this back? Like, please, there's not one healthy thing in your cart. Everything is Pop-Tarts, Cheetos, colas, like everything is just loaded with sugar and processed crap. And that's all you're consuming all day. I mean, it's crazy, man. And I love your point of it's individualized. And this worked for me. This was 4 or 5 years ago. I just kept a food journal for 2 weeks. And what I did is about 10, 15 minutes after I ate, this is what led me to give up Lucky Charms, to be honest. Like I didn't change anything at the beginning, but I would write what I ate and then my energy level under it from a scale of 1 to 100. And I just started being kind of intuitive and mindful about how do I feel after I eat these things? And I'm like, dude, I feel like crap when I'm eating these processed cereals and a lot of some of this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm my body is giving me a signal then that I feel this way, I need to not put those things in my body very much.
Yeah, that's amazing actually. How did you decide to make that change? Like what made you, because that's like a very, I was actually gonna say that's like one of the key ways that you should be kind of monitoring what you eat.
It's kind of like an elimination diet, so to speak. All the foods
Right.
that were continuously making me low energy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut those out. For me, to be quite honest, my wife snapped a picture of me and I was an athlete in high school and then, somewhat in shape in college. We got married. I got an office job. I put on 20 pounds, didn't hit the gym for 18 months. I was eating the Starbucks sugary every day, the Lucky Charms,
Yeah.
and my wife snapped a picture and my belly was just hanging over. And I said, I got to do something. I'm on pace now. I'm going to be that 40-year-old guy that's 50 pounds overweight. I'm already 20 now and I'm 34. I'm going to be that guy. And I said, I refuse to be that guy. So that's when I sort of got addicted to health and habits and putting the right things in my body and mind and things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's it's so important because like you see a lot of information out there and people are telling you use this diet, use that diet. Like, the carnivore diet is pretty big, the keto diet is pretty big, but I always tell people like a food journal is like an excellent way of trying to figure out like what is causing like low energy for you, if it's causing stomach upset, if it changes bowel habits. Like it's so important because like for me, I don't know why, but for some reason like my body doesn't like chicken for some, I don't know why it's that way, but like so the majority of stuff I eat is usually pork and beef and actually lamb. I can't figure it out, but
See, that's
those are
interesting because I won't play like a big poker game, or if I've eaten a lot of red meat, it tends to make me a little lower energy. And chicken, I like fire on all cylinders. That's so funny, man.
yeah. So I think it has to do with like the microbiome, right? Like our bodies develop differently, and so like you have to listen. And I think like over time, and people start getting overweight and obese, it like this is kind of getting hocus pocusy, but like you kind of almost disconnect your mind and body like connection because you're disrupting the hormonal and metabolic balance. And there's no evidence for this, but like yeah, this is all anecdotal in my experience, and I listening to other people tell me like what was worked for them, what hasn't. And seeing patients like for years, it's kind of crazy. Like you meet like these people that are like 90 something in the hospital and they're on no medications. And I'm like, how did you do this? Like they're like, it's always like they're active. They have like a very regimented diet. Like their social connections are amazing. It's very fun to like have a conversation with them. It's also funny like they drink a little bit of alcohol too, but I don't know if that has any impact or not. But yeah, I think like it's so important to like listen to your body, even with all the evidence out there. Like these studies, they aren't tailored for individuals. They kind of take everything as a whole, you know.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a really good point. I think it comes back to the individual, right? You can't rely on, well, I'm just going to go to the doctor and by the time I'm 60, he's going to cure me with all these things, or 40 or 16 now we're seeing, I just want him to cure me, right? And I think it goes back to that. I tweeted this morning just creating a healthy lifestyle. Like I think too many people picture health as this torturous hour on a treadmill and eating a bunch of bland food that they hate. And they're like, I'm not doing that. And it's just the opposite to me. It's creating a lifestyle around movement, doing things you love. If you love to dance, go dance, man. Get moving. If you love to play basketball with friends and shoot hoops or ultimate frisbee, or find activity. Not everybody has to do the same stuff. Find things that you enjoy that create movement, and find foods. Keep a little log for a while. Find the foods that are healthy that you like. And I mean, I eat the same 10, 12 things over and over again for the last 4.5, 5 years, mostly same foods over and over, but I enjoy them.
right. I think that some people are like, that's boring. I'm like, well, I mean, boring is like kind of healthy almost a little bit, but like it's a regimented way of doing this. And I stick to like the 80-20 rule. I'm like,
Yeah.
80% of the time I'll eat healthy, but I love donuts, man. I mean, I gotta have a donut every once in a while.
Yeah, everybody's
But
got their thing, man. I'm cookie dough ice cream.
oh, I love cookie dough too, man. That's like great. But yeah, I saw your post about like you hate run. I love running, dude. I just did a half marathon in Monterey.
That's awesome, man.
But like you have to find your own thing. I agree with it. It's just like people like, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. But like, well, I kind of want. I don't know how to say it to people like you don't understand what you're missing out on if you were like to adopt a healthy lifestyle. I've seen the difference between I've been like unhealthy and then it's like night and day. You're almost like on a high. And I want people to experience the same thing. It's just like it may seem hard in the beginning, but you just like you have to start taking like those steps. And back to like what you said earlier, I see more often than not, it's a knowledge issue. Like people don't realize what they're doing, and by the time it catches up to them, it's like a little bit too late. And so that's why like I'm trying to spread that message,
Yeah.
because it's just it's so important that people can live like their life to their fullest and not like kind of be sitting around wondering like why they're feeling the way they feel when they can make changes to like help them get where they want to go.
It is the difference. I love how you said that. And it's not just like years on your life. Like, yes, eating healthy and being active and moving is gonna add years to your life, most likely, right? It's a very I don't think you can find a study that would disprove that. But also like the quality of your days, your energy level, your sex life, your all of these things that matter so much. And I feel like that's where we're at as a society. We're seeing a lot of middle-aged guys, especially with like literally 200 in the testosterone levels. They're 36 years old, man. And you look back a couple hundred years ago, 36-year-old men were going out and having to hunt and kill things and fight and like do physical things. And now nobody does anything physical. We sit and we stare. And you have to sort of go out and seek that discomfort. I mean, to be honest, before this podcast, man, I was outside shirtless, 48 degrees here, barefoot, and I was running sprints out in my park, right? And I have to find that discomfort because my day-to-day life, man, I can control my temperature in my shower, in my house, in my car. And life is so easy and convenient. You can push a button. I can have any food delivered to my door within 15 minutes now. I think that's kind of a dangerous thing where we're at in society. And so everybody needs to say and take control of that for themselves and to say, what do I want my life to look like? Do I want to be healthy for my kids and grandkids? And, I heard a wise quote from a guy that I follow on Twitter that I love. His name's The Man's Life, Steven. And this guy's in his 50s and just a beast. And his kids are super healthy. And you can just see the blueprint of his life. And he'll be like this into his 80s and 90s, most likely, right? And he said every bite of healthy food is an investment into your grandkids. And every time you get up and make the choice to move and do healthy things, it's an investment into them. And I thought that was a really great way to reframe it. So for anybody who's out there listening who maybe thinks, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, where would you tell them to start? Maybe they're just, dude, I was maybe healthy. Last time I was healthy was high school when I was an athlete, right? Now I'm 40. I don't really know where to start or what to do. What would be your best advice to them?
So I think the first thing that you need to do is kind of change your diet. I mean, just merely cutting out processed food, and I keep saying processed food, but there's so many different processed food that people don't know that's what it is. But like any juices that you're drinking, any sodas, anything that comes like in a box, like it's all processed. I would cut that out. But if you're not just you have to change your diet. But exercise is just like it's so important. And people think like they have to go out there and like pump iron, lift weights, do something kind of extreme. But something as simple as like walking, like even in a fasted state, like if you get up in the morning. So what I would say is I would eat, don't eat anything after 5 o'clock, like especially if you're going to bed like at 8, 9, 10. And then if you wake up in the morning, walk something as simple as walking. That like burns fat. Fat is where you need to like get your exercise to like kind of hone in and kind of melt that away. So those are the two key things I would do.
Not drinking calories is a big one. Not like never drinking calories, and like the fruit juices are very high in sugar and calories a lot, right?
Yeah. And there's not very many studies to kind of prove this, but yeah, I agree with the fruit sugar. But I see a lot of people taking like a lot of fruits and they're like blending it up and liquefying, and then they don't realize that they're adding extra calories in the day. And so like, and then the other thing is like the diet was like so important, like increasing your protein intake.
Mm.
I'm guilty of this. When I was younger, I didn't realize like you need a lot of protein. People think protein is just for building muscle. It's not for building, it's not just for building muscle. Every metabolic reaction in your body, all your skin, your hair, like this is all made up of protein. Your protein like runs, I call them like nature's nanobots for your body. They all fold down and they cause, and they also have like this thermic effect. Your body has to break the proteins down in your intestinal tract and then absorb the individual amino acids, and then has to rebuild it into the proteins. It has to transport it back and forth. Like it takes a lot of energy to like consume and actually like use a protein compared to like if you're taking in sugars or carbohydrates. I would limit the amount of carbohydrates you're eating, limit the amount of sugars, and and I would also eat like high quality fats, like omega 3s, omega 6s, and a lot of foods that have antioxidants. If you change that, your body will start like burning fat like nothing. It just changes your entire body structure completely because like it kind of like ramps up your metabolism if you're exercising and eating just the right things. I have like a
Sorry, what are the best types of proteins people could eat then? If like best protein sources in your opinion?
So I'm gonna be a little bit biased here, so I eat meat. It's just it's a lot more absorbable. There's a lot more protein in like the specific weight of meat they're eating. But like chicken, on all lean chicken, like chicken breasts, grass-fed beef. I always say grass-fed beef, like grass-fed lamb. And if you're a vegetarian, tofu is like a very high source of like it's a complete protein. It's just like
man, it tastes like anything else you're eating, so it's kind of like good, man. If you do like tofu and eggs and like piece of sausage, it tastes great, man.
Yeah, and you can flavor it to whatever you want, like. And any of the beans, like beans, lentils, they have like great sources of protein. But the other thing is like it's so important to have complete protein sources. So if you're a vegetarian, you need to be very like on top of your protein intake. You have to make sure that you're taking in all 11 amino acids, essential amino acids, and then the rest as well. But those are the most important. And it's like they recommend, I think the RDA recommends like around 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram per day of protein. And that's a lot.
Man. Yeah, when I first read that, I was like, dude, I need to take in like 100 grams of protein a day. That's pretty wild if you think about it,
Yeah, and if you're more active, you need to actually take in more. You should be doing like almost like 1 to 2. When I was training for this half marathon, I could not eat enough meat. It was like insane. I just my body was just like going crazy, like the amount of protein. And that's why I say you have to listen to your body. But
that is the other thing too. It's hard to overeat that because if I eat 2 organic grilled chicken breasts, which I do for lunch every day, or thick chicken thighs every day, is pretty much what I eat, and a couple veggies. It's really hard. I'm full. I don't feel like continuing to eat. But dude, if I eat like the Lucky Charms, man, I can sit there and eat a box and then a whole thing of chips. I can just keep going. It's not satiating, right? So that's the other thing about protein is it fills you up. It leaves you satisfied.
Yeah, and you don't get hungry after it. It's really amazing how that works. And then I have these 5 pillars. I'm like, it's nutrition, sleep, exercise, and then also like preventative. It's like preventive or like preventive medicine. You have to keep track of what you're doing, right? Your metrics, like you said, you journal. Like people have to start journal. Like you have to know what your blood work is showing you. You have to look at your cholesterol levels, your insulin level, which is something that you can do. You can even check your testosterone. I think all those things are like super important. Like sleep, I think, is an underrated superpower of our body. We developed it over all these years for a specific reason. You can, if you're actually getting quality sleep, it regulates your hormones. It can actually cause you to lose weight. But if everything's completely thrown out of whack, it can really like mess with your weight. It happens to me because I sometimes do night shifts, and I don't know what it is. Like if I don't get sleep, I just start craving like junk food. It's like
my wife kind of that a lot, and we've noticed it with our children too. If they get a bad couple nights of sleep, they're craving sugar. They're asking for bad food all the time. That's like where I guess you're so tired you want that dopamine hit or what that is. But we've noticed that a lot. We talk about that a lot. It's how it's important it is for us because I'm like the kind of guy, I'm annoyed that we have to sleep 7-8 hours a night. I'd rather I wish we were like a car and we could just plug in and fill up once every few days,
Yeah.
I got too much other stuff I want to do, right?
I've like narrowed it down to a science. I can function on like 7, but I have to get 8. after 6, I start having word finding difficulty and like
Yeah.
it's like, but you were talking about your kids. It's like I see this night and day difference. Like sometimes like on the weekends we'll get like super sugary food for the kids. This is like a treat, and then he's like super. I have a 4-year-old. He's like super irritable. He's like he's complaining all day. Like he's just like it's like night and day. And you give him like some good food, and he's good for like an entire day. It's kind of crazy how that works.
We've noticed the same thing, man. We have 2 3-year-olds, and both of them, like when we give them a treat or we go to ice cream, dude, the rest of the night they're just like they're little wild maniacs, man. And they're eating well and they're sleeping well, and it goes. Look, adults aren't much different, you know. Yeah, you
No.
mentioned like keeping it every Sunday, man. I make my little handy sheet of what I'm working out, what I'm eating, how many steps I'm getting, and just taking 10 15 minutes to be really intentional about what you want to put into your body, what your goals are. And on that sheet, I have a couple nights. I'm the 80-20 like you, where me and my wife go to dinner. I'll have the French fries. I'll have a little bit. I'm gonna enjoy every bite of that, being mindful that I don't need to be perfect. I just need to make sure that I'm being healthy most of the time.
Yeah. And if you go back to like what you were talking about earlier, like longevity is like it's really important to me, because like I never really got to know my grandfathers, but I knew all my grandmothers. And like I want to be there for like my grandkids. I want to be able to like roughhouse with them. Like I want to be able to take them up and like throw them up in the ear, like that sort of great grandkids too, like you see a lot of people like in their 70s and 80s now, like super ripped, like very fit. And there's this misperception that sorry. There's just this misperception that you have to like go downhill after a certain age. There's this I see this thing going around Twitter about how like you lose 5 to 8% of your muscle mass as you. I'm like, maybe that's only because like people think like they have to be sedentary when they get older. Maybe people think you have to be less active. I mean, what if you completely stayed active and try to maintain your muscle throughout your years? I mean, you don't have to go that route. I don't believe. But
yeah, I see even my in-laws. My father-in-law is a doctor. He's 70. Maybe he doesn't want me to say his age. He's in his mid-70s. They're in their 70s. Dude, they are active. They run every day. They walk. They never take a car around the neighborhood. They're just walking constantly. I bet they get 25,000 steps a lot of days, man. They're on the floor playing with the grandkids, and they're in their 70s. My parents are in their late 60s now. And my dad runs, bikes, and lifts every single day, man. And my wife and my mom, like, same. She's up at 5 a.m. She journals, then she lifts, then and seeing the quality of life, like, yeah, she lifts as well a couple days a week. And those when my boys were 1, I'll never forget this. They strapped the boys on them when we did an 8-mile hike, and they were 65,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that quality of life, I believe, is possible to most people. Now, you had a cool post on, your genetics, and I kind of want to ask you on that is what's your take on how big of a role your genetics play, and can you fight against that? Because I've heard from people, hey, Ty must be nice, man. You got genetics to be, well, my genetics, I'm just big boned, I'm just this, I'm just that. A lot of limiting beliefs, but what's your take on that? What would you say to someone around that?
Right. So, your genetics, it does play a role. They have done studies on this. But, I think like in my post, I mentioned that it goes up to about 30% contribution. So all the other factors you can change and actually kind of control your weight. There's different body types, obviously, but like what's important is percent of body fat. I tend to like minimum it should be below like 20%, but there's a little bit of room to give or take there. But there's this awesome thing within our DNA where like you can turn on and off genes based on like what your body's doing, like the environment. So, if you're eating super healthy, you're exercising. When I say exercising, I'm a little bit biased because I absolutely believe that you should have to resistance train. Resistance training is like key. There's different forms of it, but like I do weightlifting. You don't have to do weightlifting. You can do calisthenics. You can do like any sort of body weight exercises. Intensity is where you need to like kind of hone in on what you need to do. But like exercise as in cardiovascular stuff and resistance training, diet, even if you're getting the right sleep, you're turning off and on all these different genes by, they call it methylation. But even though you're born with a specific genetic code, you can regulate like how the genes are expressed. And so they say that it contributes, yeah, 30%, but that doesn't mean that you have to be overweight. It doesn't mean you have to be obese. And I anecdotally, like one of my colleagues, he like decided one day he wanted to lose a bunch of weight, and he lost so quickly that I thought he was like had cancer or like he was sick or something like that. But he told me like, his family, like they're prone to like being obese, and then they have like a lot of cardiac events when they're older. And he just like he stepped in line and just immediately, like, he's very regimented. He brings Tupperware in, like when we go to conferences, he doesn't eat any of the food. He brings his own food and like he eats, and he's very regimented with what he does. And he was able to like lose, it was probably like over like maybe 100 pounds like in a year. And I was like very impressed. So I mean, it's anecdotal, but like there's also evidence out there that shows that it only contributes a small portion to like what happens to your weight.
Yeah, I had a guest on here he's a big guy on Twitter too, Dave Dana. I love this guy. He's over 400 pounds 2 years ago, and he's documenting his weight loss. And he's the same thing as your buddy. He very regimented, eats similar stuff, goes to Planet Fitness every morning at 5 a.m. And I believe to date he's down 131 pounds in like 15 months, something like that. Another friend of mine, Andy Harris, who was a guest on the pod, same thing. He was approaching 400. I believe today he's like 260, 270.
That is impressive.
It can be done, man.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know why I think it's just like I don't know if it's a knowledge issue or if it's an excuse issue, because people always fall back on like their defensive measures as to why they're not doing something. But
the ego is very good at protecting you, man. Like for a long time, I used to say, I wish I might see a guy like you 10 years ago and be like, must be nice. He's born smart. He's a doctor. He's rich. He's, and now it's like, man, what can I learn from this guy? Right. There's two different mindsets around that.
Yeah. And I think mindset is there's actually evidence on this. Your belief, like your belief in what you can do, like can shape how you will like become. Your thoughts. People think it's not important, but I think it's like one of the most important things that you can change or do in order to change your life. Regardless of it.
I will go to my deathbed on this, man. I'll fight this to the death. That every battle is won or lost up here. There was a study, I don't know if you saw this. This blew my mind, where they had these guys and they told them we have this miracle drug for hair growth. And they took like 1,000 bald guys, and all they did was hype this. All you got to do is rub this on your head every day. You'll grow hair back. All it was water. And it was I think it was somewhere around 28 to 30% of guys actually started growing hair back by rubbing water and believing that their hair was going to grow back. And when I read this study and I dug into that for a while, I thought the power of our mind is so crazy, man. It's so crazy. If you have this deep self-belief, I can do this, I almost feel like God, the universe, whatever you want to say, it opens up. And when you are singular focused towards that thing, whether that be weight loss, getting the body you want, getting the degree you want, whatever that goal is, if you wake up every day and your why is strong and you know why you're going for that, everything gets out of your way. It lines up. I've seen this a million times out of a million now.
And it's crazy because sometimes it just seems effortless, right? It just like, it just like happens. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. And, in science, there's like this thing called the placebo effect. Mm-hmm. And that's, it is so powerful. Like, so the FDA has to go through this whole like process, clinical trials, to get medications to the market. And they have to put the medications up against the placebo effect, which is like your body's ability to like heal itself and kind of repair itself. And only 10% of the medications that come to market beat the placebo effect.
Wow.
But the other caveat is that you're still using the placebo effect with these other medications as well. So it's like, it's really hard to kind of compensate for it, but it is so powerful. Like you can look up like various studies. It's been documented all the way back to World War like 2 times. Like they ran out of the morphine and they brought the soldiers in and they didn't know what to do, so they injected like saline, which is just like salt solution, and they thought they were getting morphine, and their pain just like completely went away. It's just kind of insane what your body can do once your mind like believes like what's capable of.
And there's this really great movie I saw when I was a kid. It reminds me of this called Space Jam with Michael Jordan, where he pretends to give them the secret sauce. And he's like, it makes it play, make you play like me. And then they go out and they win. And he tells them it was just water. It was in your mind, right? Like, yeah. But I do believe so much in that mind-body connection, man. And that's why I spend time when I wake up every morning by myself, becoming very mindful. And I actually take a moment to pray and visualize the guy I want to be that day, and kind of think about the food that I want to put in my body, how I want to conduct myself, you know, how I want to be in this world. And I feel like too many people are just on autopilot, man. The food's there, so they eat it. They don't think about it, you know, and they just spend a lot of their life like that. And I think I once read we're 90 to 95% in our subconscious. So we are just on autopilot a lot. And that's why your habits and your routines are so important, because a lot of times you just do what you do because that's the neural pathway that you follow, you know. Well, I do what I do because that's what I do, right? So you need to be very mindful about those habits and what you're putting in, but you can also choose at any moment to take a deep breath and become very mindful and make that next good choice. And maybe you've been going this way for a long time. You can pause today and you can go back and take that first step.
What you're saying is really powerful. It's just, that's why like this mind body connection is so important. I wish there was just, I don't know how to kind of communicate to people like, this is something that you have complete control over. I think like our environment and our like day-to-day activities kind of can impact like how we kind of go through life. Like we're kind of set up like, you know, people come home, they go to work 9 to 5, they come home, they sit in front of Netflix, they just chill, they don't have the energy to cook. Like it's just like this vicious cycle. And you know, it does not have to be this way. It's just like you can just make a decision to change, and it will happen as long as you just start taking action. It's funny how like when you start taking action, things start happening that you wouldn't normally see or hear or do, like if you were just sitting there doing nothing. Just taking small steps is just so key.
So powerful, man. I love that you know, even just waking up, taking a little walk, starting your day off that way, swapping around Netflix at night for meal prep and cook your own healthy food. You know, like those 2 changes alone, man, start there and then see where you go from there. Do your own research, keep going, right? Reach out to smart people. Like there's a million things you can do from there, man. I love that. That's a great thought. I wanted to hit on one thing here as we got a few minutes left. You had said, you know, how to stay mentally sharp, and you have a great list of things. And one of them was consume brain boosting foods. And then obviously like limit processed sugar, sleep, a lot of these things that probably a lot of us know. What in your opinion are brain boosting foods? What are some foods that maybe are staples in your diet that, you know, have made you super healthy, or that other people should think about having as staples in their diet?
Yeah. So specifically for the brain, anything that's high in omega-3s. So like fatty fish, salmon is so important. I try to eat salmon here once a week at least. For me and especially my kids that are growing, you want to make sure that they have really good brain development, specifically like, so wild caught sockeye salmon. You don't want the farm raised. They give that stuff grain fed stuff. It's not healthy. To blueberries are like one of the best brain boosting things you can eat. They're off season now, but like you can always like buy frozen ones. Eggs have like a ton of protein, specifically choline. There's this factor in your brain that kind of, it's a support network. It's called brain derived naturopathic factor. Specifically choline kind of helps like boost that as well. Green leafy vegetables like broccoli, spinach, that sort of stuff. These are all like high in antioxidants as well. And then turmeric as well. Turmeric is like super.
We just started a couple months ago. My wife started sprinkling that on a lot of our food, man.
You know what? So what I started doing was I actually like buy the turmeric root and I peel it and throw it in like a jar with like some ginger and like some black pepper, and I pour water over it and just made this giant tea.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But those are some of the brain boosting foods. And specifically like the omega-3s, they're really important because their brain's myelin. That's like, it's like, you know, if you have a wire and it's like covered in like insulation, the myelin is like the insulation for the nerves, and it helps speed up nerve conduction and kind of helps you think better. But those are a few of the foods that you can eat.
That's awesome. Appreciate that. That was more selfishly. I want to know. I hope some do too, but I was like, yeah, I'm honored. I'll go back and watch that. Take some notes on that stuff, man. I appreciate it. Man, I really appreciate you coming on today. What I find awesome about life and the time that we live is that I just get to connect with a guy like you that I never would have met. We live 7 hours apart, right? Or whatever that is. And I'm super grateful, man, that I can connect with you. I'm going to urge any one of my people out here that are following me to go give my man a follow. We're going to link all of his stuff below. I just signed up for his newsletter too. It's theunifiedbody.com. Excited for that. At Imran Ally, ALLY. We'll link all the things that he does below. Give this man a follow on Twitter. Puts out great content every day, actionable stuff that you guys can take away. Sign up for his newsletter too. One thing that I find cool too, man, is, you're an MD, obviously so much more educated than I am. And I hear you talking and breaking down these things. Oh, we need more protein because of this. And I think back to my days when I was a personal trainer and 29, and I'd be like, we'd get done with a lift and I'd say to my butt, let's go drink some protein, man. Let's get the protein, whatever way works for you. Find what works for you and just make sure you're getting it in, right?
Yeah. That's so funny, right?
I love that, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. Is there any last word you want to give to people out there or anybody watching?
Well, I just want to say, like, if you're tired of having like that brain fog, feeling low energy, just take a look at what you're doing, what you're eating, how much you're exercising, your sleep, obviously your stress levels. I wholly believe, like, if you take control of your health, you can take control of your life, and I think you can make a bigger impact than what you're doing right now, if that's something that you're looking to do. But that's why, Tyler, I want to say thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun. This is hopefully we can do it again in the future. Like, if
do it, man. You can be a regular on the pod if you're fine with that. I love that, man.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm grateful for all that you share and all that you help people, man. It's obvious you just have a heart to help people. And one thing, man, that you said, that we got one body here on Earth. And it's like your energy level, all this stuff's connected. It makes sense to be mindful and take care of it. This is the one Earth suit you get here, man. You should be mindful and take care of it. It makes a lot of sense.
And also, like, you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. And that's super important.
Amen, man. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, brother. I appreciate it. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Go be kind to yourself. Go be kind to others. Go bless up. Let's have the greatest day of our lives. Be mindful of the food you're putting into your body. Go get some movement today. Why don't you get down and do 10 push-ups after this pod if you want, man. You guys go have the greatest day. We'll chat soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.